now. Traditionally, we have recognized the emergency, we have declared the emergency, and we have helped them out. And when Bill Clinton was President of the United States, we declared emergencies like this on 3 occasions, in 1998, 99, and 2001, and we balanced the budget. I oppose this measure.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Kentucky.
I yield 3 minutes to a brand new member of this body, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Moreno of Pennsylvania.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, that's 3 minutes.
Make an opinion.
The gentleman's recognized for 3 minutes.
My father taught me a long time ago not to make a speech or give an opinion unless I thought it was important. I think tonight it's important, and I hope that you also think it's important. I would never question anyone's motive and ideals. However, we are here tonight to meet the immediate needs of the people that we represent. This vote is not about politics. This vote is not about Republicans or Democrats. This vote is not about cut or not cut. This vote is about coming to the aid of the American people whom we represent. The people who have been devastated by floods. People like friends and neighbors, seniors and children in the 10th Congressional District of Pennsylvania and on the East Coast. It is heartbreaking and it is heart-wrenching. You must see it firsthand to understand it. The federal government's main purpose is to protect its citizens from disaster, both from terrorism and from natural disasters. My staff and I stood in mud, waste, and stagnant water over the last 3 weeks, along with families who lost everything. Furniture, clothes, photos, toys stacked outside of their homes that were destroyed or condemned. If each of you stood where I stood, I know in my heart that because you are compassionate, this bill would have been passed by now. I tried to comfort children who were sitting in cars or on car rooftops and in truck beds because they could not get into their home that was condemned and filled with the same stagnant mud and water and waste and snakes that were outside their homes. I talked to grown men that were crying because their homes were destroyed and asked me, where am I going to safely put my family tonight? A little girl not more than 8 years old asked me where she was going to sleep because she no longer had her bed and her bedroom in which she and her sister slept. Seniors were trapped on the second floor of their home because the first floor was flooded. Small businesses were completely wiped out. I plead with you, I implore you, I beg you to pass this flood relief now for our people whom do not have the basic comforts that those of us here have. The American people are depending on us to give them a hand up, and they deserve our immediate attention. Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the ranking member of the Commerce, Justice, Science Subcommittee, Mr. Fattah of Pennsylvania.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. If we could have a vote to provide disaster relief, every member of this chamber would cast a vote in the affirmative. What we're asked to make tonight is a Solomon-like choice between tens of thousands of jobs for Americans who desperately need them and a limited amount of disaster relief. That is not a fair choice, and I guess the majority wasn't happy with the polling that showed that only 12% of the public thought that Congress was doing a good job, or at 13%, we dropped to 12. I guess we're trying to get into the single digits. What we need to do is to do our work, Now, this is a program where Ford Motor Company borrowed a loan guarantee of 5.9 to put people to work, some 30,000 people to work in Michigan and Illinois, Kentucky, Missouri, Ohio. This is a program that's working, that taxpayers' money is paid back through these loan guarantees. The National Association of Manufacturers in today's National Journal says that we now, as we have, lead the world in manufacturing with 21% of globally manufactured products. But China is now in second place at 15, and Japan has dropped to third at 12. Why would we want to concede our leadership in this world in manufacturing? In the Republican decade, under the Bush White House, we lost 350,000 manufacturing jobs. We saw tens of thousands of small manufacturers close down in our nation. Now, this administration, people talk about the number in August, but let's look at the entire 20 months of the Obama recovery. 2.5 million jobs led by increases consistently in manufacturing. I ask that we reject this CR. I hope that the majority would come to the House with an approach that would actually respond to the disasters that we face without asking us to put more Americans out of work. Thank you.
Gentleman from Kentucky.
Minutes, Mr. Speaker, to the chairman of the Financial Services Subcommittee on Appropriations, gentlelady from Missouri, Ms. Emerson.
Gentlelady from Missouri is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the resolution. It is a responsible measure. It makes good on the promises we must keep to members of our military, to our veterans, and to Americans who rely upon the essential functions of the federal government. It cares for the needs of millions of Americans who have suffered from the effects of dramatic natural disasters, including the folks in my state of Missouri who live in Joplin, who live along the Mississippi in my specific district, who live along the Missouri River in the northern part of our state. These folks can't wait another day for help because people are playing politics with this bill. The House and the Appropriations Committee are dedicated to a responsible process, and this bill reflects the amount of time needed to complete that work. I think we've realized this year on both sides of the aisle that we have to bring the size and the spending of the federal government into line with reality. In hearings and markups that we've conducted in the House, in the negotiations to make specific and significant spending cuts, not only this year, but also in each of the next 10 and through the budget process, we have laid the groundwork for a new era of stewardship for our taxpayer dollars. In addition to our covenant with members of the military, with veterans, and with the families depending on a helping hand up, and for Americans who are really suffering from true emergencies that have devastated their homes, like Mr. Marino said, their jobs and their lives. And besides all of this, we do have a responsibility to the American taxpayer, to future generations who cringe at the sight of our debt and our deficits. Mr. Speaker, this bill allows us to work in good faith, to make good on both our promises and our responsibilities, and I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to once again put politics aside and support it here tonight. Yield back.
Gentlelady yields back her time. The gentleman from Washington.
Would the Speaker tell us how much time both sides have?
The gentleman from Washington has 14.5 minutes left, and the gentleman from Kentucky has 18 minutes left.
I yield myself as much time as I may utilize.
The gentleman is recognized.
Today was a very dramatic day on the stock market. The Dow Jones dropped 500 points because investors are worried that we're headed into a second recession. And what do we get from the majority party? is to cut out a bill, cut out a program that creates jobs. It's already created the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program has already created 39,000 jobs. It's going to create another 39,000 with the $2.5 billion that remains. And the 1.5 that we're taking out of there would create another 10,000 jobs. These are jobs. The only way we're going to get unemployment down is to put people back to work. And here we are again, after savaging all these other programs, cutting people out of work in the public sector. Now we're going to cut out automobile jobs. So let me read you what the National Association of Manufacturers, which is not an organ of the Democratic Party, let's hear what they've got to say. The NAM is the largest trade association in the United States, representing over 11,000 small, medium, and large manufacturers in all 50 states. We are the leading voice for the manufacturing economy, which provide millions of high-wage jobs in the U.S. Two-thirds of our members are small businesses, which serve as the engine for job growth. Our mission is to enhance the competitiveness of manufacturers and improve American living standards by shaping a legislative and regulatory environment conducive to U.S. economic growth. The NAM is writing to express our support for the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program. This is the program that we're taking $1.5 billion out of, authorized under the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007, with bipartisan support and signed into law by President Bush. The ATVM program is an example of what government-industry partnerships can accomplish. It has helped create and preserve thousands of auto sector jobs and put our nation on a path towards greater energy security. The NAM believes defunding ATVM will hurt manufacturers and their employees. I mean, if you had to go out and find a business group in this country that has more credibility, I don't know what it would be. That's the National Association of Manufacturers. The Chamber of Commerce, which is also not an organ of the Democratic Party, it says, as Congress sets spending priorities, the Chamber wishes to highlight a few important facts about the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Loan Program. First, the program was authorized in the Energy Independence and Security Act, which was supported by both Republicans and Democrats as an important step in reducing America's dependence on oil from unstable regions. Second, ATVM loans, which will be repaid with interest, incentivize automakers and suppliers to build more fuel-efficient advanced technology vehicles in the U.S., providing new opportunities for American workers in a sector of the economy that is critical to the nation's recovery. Third, the fact that the Department of Energy has yet to use the funds appropriated for the program is not the fault of industry. Numerous loan applications have been in the queue for years, waiting for the administration to complete its due diligence, and that line started in the previous administration. So this is a jobs program. I say to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, why we want to take care of those people with disasters. We want to take care of them. We will take care of them. But we also want to provide jobs for Americans who are unemployed. If I were in your shoes, I'd support jobs for workers and also take care of those people who are suffering because of the disaster. Now these are Republican-leaning organizations. They get it. Just vote no, and let's get a clean bill and do the right thing for the country.
The gentleman from Washington reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Kentucky.
I yield 3 minutes, Mr. Speaker, to the chairman of the Interior Appropriations Subcommittee, the gentleman from Idaho, Mr. Simpson.
The gentleman from Idaho is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I loved listening to the gentleman from Washington's debate. Now, if the gentleman wants to really create some jobs in this country, we can create hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs if we'll start getting oil going back in the Gulf and permitting. We can create more. The gentleman talked about The gentleman talked about not being so reliant on foreign oil. We got rigs right now that were in the Gulf that are off the coast of Africa because they can't get permitted in the Gulf. Now, you want to create millions of jobs? Join us on that, and let's create millions of jobs. The gentleman talked about, geez, he just doesn't understand how people could change their vote. You know, people actually sometimes learn more information and decide that they were wrong the time before, and now they'll change their vote. Just like some people on that side of the aisle who actually issue press releases saying that they were going to support this CR change their mind. That's okay. I'd be happy to yield to the gentleman.
Out a press release. But I'll tell you one thing. I listen.
Reclaiming my
to the Chamber of Commerce, the National
Reclaiming my
Association of
time.
Manufacturers.
Reclaiming my time. Mr. Speaker, I rise tonight in support of this continuing resolution. The CR is vital to keep our government operating over the next 7 weeks while Congress completes its work on the next budget. It's worth reminding members that tonight this CR actually reduces spending from last year's enacted levels and saves taxpayers billions of dollars. The irony is voting against this CR actually is a vote for more spending. If you want to reduce government spending, then you should vote for this CR. It's pretty simple, Billy. FEMA's coffers for disaster assistance are about to run dry. There is no such thing as a Republican natural disaster or a Democrat natural disaster. The last thing Congress should do is hold up disaster assistance because of partisan politics. We need to approve this CR tonight and get the relief to those in need as quickly as humanly possible. Now, I got to tell you in all honesty, I'm not one of those people who believe that we have to offset every emergency. We have done some in the past, some we have not. But in the past, we have not had a $14 trillion deficit. That's the danger to this country, is the $14 trillion deficit and the $1.6 trillion we add to it every damn year. Now, I got to admit, this is only $1 billion, but you know what? Some people say, oh, that's only $1 billion. I heard one member say yesterday it was nickels and dimes. In Idaho, $1 billion is not nickels and dimes. We did not get into this situation $1 trillion at a time. We got here $1 million and $1 billion at a time, and that's how we're going to get out of this situation. So let's do our job and do what's right for the country and get this deficit under control. And if we can offset it, let's offset it. I yield back. I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The chair will remind the members. The chair will remind the members to refrain from using profanity on the floor of the House. Gentleman from Washington.
Shocking, shocking. I yield 4 minutes to distinguished ranking member of the Natural Resources Committee, Mr. Markey of Massachusetts.
I thank the gentleman.
The gentleman is recognized for 4 minutes.
This is not a debate over compassion. This is not a debate over who cares more about the people in Joplin or the people in Vermont.
There are people over on both sides who are not conducting them in a parliamentary fashion.
House will be in order. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
This is a debate about what the Republicans, what the Tea Party has decided to use as an excuse, as a guise to finish off the revolution that the Democrats had put in place that changes our relationship with where we get our energy from. Big oil and big coal have fought solar, wind, all-electric vehicles, biomass, geothermal, that entire revolution, because they know that it will eat into their profits. And so a disaster occurs that each of us wants to respond to. And the Republicans responding to the oil and coal industry says this is our chance to kill the revolution that makes it possible to have vehicles go 50, 60, 80, 100 miles a gallon without oil, no oil, that makes it possible for us to have wind and solar generate the electricity that will fuel those vehicles without sending greenhouse gases up into the atmosphere, which is changing our climate and leading to these storms, leading to these floods, leading to these disasters that then need FEMA, need the relief that we give to these families. So they take the chance, they take the opportunity to kill the very programs which are the solution to these disasters which are being created here in our country and around the world. The agenda of big oil and big coal. And the temerity of it all is that they know that the automotive program has already created 39,000 jobs in our country over the last 3 years, and that this one cut that they're talking about tonight will kill 10,000 jobs over the next year. In the solar industry, and by the way, they cut out $100 million in solar and wind guarantees as well. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, there are 85,000 jobs in the wind industry, almost all of them created in the last 4 years. There are 85,000 jobs in the coal industry. In other words, in the last 5 years, wind now equals the entire coal industry. There are 100,000 jobs in the solar industry, and last year we were a net exporter to China. 100,000 jobs in solar, 85,000 jobs in wind, and it is the future. The oil industry laid off 20,000 employees over the last 3 years. Let us talk here about the future, about young people, about this planet, about backing out the oil from OPEC so that we can tell them we don't need their oil any more than we need their sand. That's what this debate is about tonight. And under the guise, with these crocodile tears of how much they care about the victims, as though it's any greater than on our side, they are using it as the guise to kill these programs. That's what it's all about tonight. That's why we're angry. That's what this is all about. And we resent. I yield to the gentleman from Washington
Isn't it
State.
true that these alternative energy programs all create jobs? I yield him one additional minute.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Don't they create jobs, these alternative energy programs? So instead of just having the automobile program that creates jobs cut by $1.5 billion, now they're taking $100 million out of another program that creates jobs for the American people. So this is a double header.
Yeah, they could have taken this money out of the $41 billion worth of tax breaks for the oil and gas industry. But no, they take it out of solar. They take it out of wind. And by the way, wind and solar, with the same amount of money, creates 5 times more jobs than an investment in fossil fuels does. So they keep the money in for the programs that create 3 to 5 times less jobs than the program they are kneecapping here this evening. That's what this vote is all about. Under the guise, I will be more than willing to yield to the gentleman.
Is Solyndra part of the revolution that the gentleman's talking about?
Solyndra will receive no money under this program. Who will receive the money?
Time of the gentleman.
I yield 15
Indiana
seconds.
will receive the money.
The Solyndra program was started under the previous administration, under the Bush administration. The last day they tried to force it out to have it approved, and it was turned down by the good staff at the Department of Energy.
Solyndra will not receive a nickel under this program. The oil and gas industry will receive that money as they tip.
Time of the gentleman from Massachusetts has expired. The gentleman from Kentucky. Gentleman from Kentucky.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Diaz-Balart, a valued member of our committee.
The gentleman from Florida is
Chairman.
recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What the previous gentleman did not say is that Solyndra received $500 million because they have friends in high places, despite even people in this administration said don't do it. They received $500 million. If that was in a different country, we wouldn't call it waste. We would call it corruption, but we won't do that here. The gentleman didn't say that. He talks about the revolution. This cuts $100 million from a program that gave, because of influence, because of friends in high places, because of bundlers of campaign contribution funds, to a corporation that went bankrupt and laid off 1,000 people after receiving
Will the gentleman yield?
I would, of course, would love to yield.
I would just point out that one of the largest investors was Walmart, and Walmart has a long history of supporting Republican candidates. And I'll just say they've invested, I think, $300 or $400 million. So there was a lot of private sector investment here too.
I reclaim my time.
I appreciate it.
I reclaim my time. Despite what you say, sir, despite what the gentleman says, Mr. Speaker, the previous president's administration denied the funding for Solyndra because they knew it was a scam, regardless of anything else. This administration did that. Now, the reason we have to support this CR, let's cut politics aside. Let's not talk about revolutions of money blown, like stimulus money that was blown. The reason this CR makes sense is because there are people who are suffering from natural disasters. This CR funds that program, and it helps them out. And the reason this is important is because it controls the size and the cost of the federal government that is totally out of control. So no more gimmicks, no more giveaways to friends of friends because of high pressure. Let's pass a CR so we can keep the government rolling, so we can slow down the growth of government, and so we can help the victims without corruption, because you have friends in high places. I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Washington. Gentleman from Washington.
I continue to reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Kentucky.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, valued member of our committee, Mr. Dent.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, rise in support of this continuing resolution that will fund the government through November 18th. It takes care of many of our disaster needs. And as you heard from my colleague so eloquently, Mr. Marino of Pennsylvania, you heard about the plight of so many people in towns like Chick-Shinny and West Pittston, who are living in the front yard, in the cars. People are broken. Communities have been ruined. And so we need to pass this bill. I urge you to support this bill. And, you know, I've heard a lot of talk tonight about manufacturing. You know, my dad's family spent 100 years making industrial hardware in Pennsylvania. If you really care about manufacturing, some of you might have considered voting for a bill last week to allow the nation's largest exporter to open up a $1 billion facility in the state of South Carolina to hire 1,000 people to make aircraft. If you really want to help manufacturing, you should have voted for that bill. You could also help us in stopping EPA's assault on the coal industry and on the cement industry. I represent the largest cement-producing district in America. These industries are in trouble, and they're under assault by this EPA. Help us. There'll be measures considered here to deal with it. If you're truly concerned about manufacturing, innovation, and research, you wouldn't have slapped a 2.3% tax on medical devices. It's going to kill tens of thousands of jobs in this country. We make a lot of devices in my part of the world, in Pennsylvania, New Jersey. We need help. Our manufacturers need help. So rather than defending a company out in California that just wasted $500 million down the drain, taxpayer dollars, over 1,100 people out of work, let's do something to help manufacturers. Most importantly, let's pass this bill tonight to help so many people who are struggling throughout this country in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Vermont, the people of the South, Joplin, Missouri, and elsewhere who've been affected by these horrible natural disasters. Please stand up, do the right thing, vote for this continuing resolution. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from...
I continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Washington continues to reserve. The gentleman from Kentucky.
I yield 2 minutes to a hard-working member of our committee and newcomer to the Congress, Mr. Womack, Arkansas.
Gentleman from Arkansas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the distinguished chairman of the Appropriations Committee for the time. I know the hour is late. It's been a long day. Soon we will complete action on this temporary spending measure for 2012. Obviously, it is work that has to be done. As my friend, the distinguished Rules Committee chairman, appropriately quoted earlier this evening, the process has been ugly, it has been messy, but it works. The good news is that most of America has gone to bed and not witness to the bickering and rancor evidenced in this chamber. I can only hope that when they wake up tomorrow, we will have done the people's work, funding government beyond October 1st, giving necessary funding to the victims of national disasters, and doing it in such a way that promotes the kind of fiscal responsibility long demanded by the people of America. It will be sad, indeed tragic, if when the sun comes up tomorrow, this Congress, instead of bringing certainty and relief to those struggling, as this CR does, but we impose yet another threat of a government shutdown and more uncertainty into an already skeptical populace. This legislation, up until yesterday, Mr. Speaker, had bipartisan support, and only because my friends on the other side of the aisle recognized that many on our side preferred much deeper cuts and might be predisposed to opposing the CR, they pounced on it. And quickly, in an instant, that bipartisan support disappeared into the bowels of the business as usual. In other words, Mr. Speaker, it was politics ahead of the people. Let's remember that this CR we'll vote on in the next few minutes was crafted based on the numbers outlined in the BCA approved in this chamber just a few weeks ago, complete with desperately needed disaster funding reasonably and responsibly offset. I urge my colleagues to support the CR, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Washington continues to reserve his time. The gentleman from Kentucky.
May I inquire of the time remaining?
Gentleman from Kentucky has 9 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Washington has 4 3/4 minutes remaining.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Mississippi, member of the committee. Mr.
Gentleman from Mississippi is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of this resolution. The question we're debating tonight is not whether we give aid and assistance to those of our neighbors that have been hit by serious disasters. We all agree that's the appropriate thing to do. The question is, do we cut spending elsewhere to pay for that assistance? Now, what our friends on the left have told us is, look, that's not the way we've done it in the past. In fact, we've always done it by just going ahead and spending without any offset. Doing it the way we've always done it has put us $14 trillion in debt. What we have to do is exactly what the people of Monroe County, Mississippi did. On the night of April the 26th, those families had dreams, they had hopes, they had plans. And on April the 27th, the tornadoes hit, and their plans changed. And they redirected their spending plans to take care of the disaster. Now, if the families in Monroe County, Mississippi have done that, they have every reason to expect their government to do the same thing. Now, we've been told, well, that we need some government program to create jobs. If we will give the American people the assurance that their government is serious about cutting spending like this bill does, we'll give them the confidence to create jobs. If we'll remove the regulatory burdens, American businesses will create jobs. And if we will give them the assurance that we're not going to raise their taxes, the American economy will thrive and create jobs. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Washington.
I yield our remaining time to the distinguished. Go ahead. Are you going to?
Yeah.
And that's it. So we're next. I yield 4 3/4 minutes to the distinguished whip of the Democratic Party, Mr. Hoyer from Maryland, one of my best friends.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 4 3/4 minutes.
Mr. Dick's goodest friend. Mr. Speaker, this is a legislative arena, not a coliseum to attack one another. It is a legislative arena to try to come together to do what the American public expect us to do. There are at least two crises confronting the American people, and perhaps three. First of all, they're concerned about the fiscal posture of this country. They're right. We need to address that. Secondly, they're concerned about jobs. And immediately, as the gentleman from Mississippi just pointed out, and the gentleman from Pennsylvania who spoke earlier, they're concerned about the disasters that have put them at risk. And I suggest to you the people in your district and in my district who don't have a job, who aren't sure how they're going to pay their mortgage, and aren't sure that they're going to be able to buy food tomorrow, believe that they too have been confronted with a disaster. They want us to deal with all three of those items, and yes, perhaps more. Many of you have stood on this floor and said, we need to act now to help these people who have been the victims of hurricane, of quake, of fire, of flood. Now, if you want to act now, what you bring to this floor is a bill that is not controversial, so that does not get mired in this bickering back and forth because we care deeply about responding now. This bill has never enjoyed bipartisan support from my perspective, and I told your whip that on Tuesday. There was no surprise. We believe strongly that the provision that you have put in this bill is detrimental to working people and the expansion of our economy. You perhaps do not agree on that. Perhaps we have a legitimate item of disagreement. And so if you were really concerned about those flood victims, about those hurricane victims, you would have taken that out and met that issue another day. But you chose not to do that. You chose to continue the partisan path of placing at risk the continuing funding of government through November 18th, which you have all expressed a desire to do, and jobs, not that Democrats say are advantaged by the provision you want to strike, but the Chamber of Commerce and the National Association of Manufacturers. They say it puts jobs at risk. Your folks in Pennsylvania, I tell my friend, will not be helped if this bill continues to be mired in partisan differences. And you knew there was a partisan difference, and notwithstanding that, you brought it back to this floor. Now, I understand there are some of you that were concerned that this was $1.043 trillion rather than $1.019 trillion. That's been changed for you now, and I'm sure all your Tea Party friends are going to be very enthusiastic that for 0.4%, you perhaps have changed your vote. My, my, my. 0.4%. That's the difference in this bill from a fiscal perspective. My friends, Americans need our help. They don't need Republican help or Democratic help. They need all of our help. They need it now. They need it not mired in partisan bickering, as my friend said from Arkansas. They need us to come together on that which we can agree, giving our folks help when they need it, now. And I will tell you that the Senate determined that there was twice the need, indeed 3 times the need, that you have determined. Ladies and gentlemen, let's defeat this bill, and let's bring tonight or tomorrow morning a bill that I guarantee you will pass overwhelmingly in this House.
The chair will also remind the members to direct their comments to the chair.
And Mr. Speaker,
gentleman from Kentucky.
I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Kentucky. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky.
You will not set the balance of the time.
Gentleman's recognized.
This really is a simple bill. It's merely a bridge to get us until November the 18th, to continue the government basically as is until that time, to give us time to work with the Senate to put together the funding for all of fiscal 12. Norm Dix and I started out this year agreeing that we wanted to restore regular order to the Appropriations Committee and the process. And we've worked in that regard. The committee has dealt with 11 of the 12 appropriations bills. 6 of them you've had a chance on the floor to amend and pass, which you have. Unfortunately, our brethren across the Capitol have been a little bit slow, and they've passed one bill, which necessitated that we do something to continue the government while we try to work with them to bring them along on their bills and fund fiscal 12. This bill started out as a bipartisan bill. We worked to make it so. But along the way, on the eve of the bill, all of a sudden we were confronted with a partisan attack from this side of the aisle. And we had no choice but to respond. But still yet, this is a bipartisanly constructed bill. It doesn't attack anyone. The Homeland Security bill that passed the body, you'll recall, carried the provision that required that the $1 billion in that bill for FEMA would be offset from the automobile account that's been discussed. That passed this body on a bipartisan vote. Many Democrats voted for it, joined Republicans. No one raised a concern until this bill came to the floor. And all of a sudden, this great eruption of partisanship on that side of the aisle, which I am very sad about. But we'll muddle through. This is a good bill. It funds your government at the level that was agreed to by the parties in the House, Senate, and White House, the level that is now the law. It funds us until November the 18th. And by then, we hope to have worked out with our Senate brethren and sisters the funding for the rest of fiscal 12. So, the hour's late, time is short, we've made up our minds. Let's vote.
Back the remainder of his time. All time for debate is expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 412, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion by the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Rogers. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion is agreed to.
I ask for a recorded vote. Yeas and nays.
A recorded vote was requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen. Recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
The House is voting now on final passage of a short-term spending bill for the federal government. This is the second vote in as many days extending federal funding. Another measure to keep the government operating past September 30th failed yesterday. Politico writes that even with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce dissenting, the Republican leadership chose to stick with its plan to take $1.5 billion from an advanced technology manufacturing program for the auto industry that Democrats say has created jobs. And as if to punctuate the point, a new $100 million cut was added by rescinding money in an alternative energy loan fund that helped finance Solyndra, the solar panel manufacturer that has filed for bankruptcy protection. A House Energy Subcommittee is holding a hearing tomorrow to hear from Solyndra executives, but those executives are not planning to offer testimony. Their attorneys have said they'll invoke their Fifth Amendment rights. We'll have that hearing live on C-SPAN 3 at 9 a.m. Eastern. The Associated Press writes, with the economy sputtering, the warring factions of Congress headed toward gridlock over the typically non-controversial steps of delivering disaster aid or even keeping the government from shutting down. Earlier today, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid released a statement saying that the House spending measure, quote, fails to provide the relief to our fellow Americans as they struggle to rebuild their lives in the wake of floods, wildfires, and hurricanes, and it will be rejected by the Senate. And House Speaker John Boehner's spokesman said that the Senate should pass the measure quickly and, quote, any political games will delay FEMA money getting to the folks who need it. The measure the House is voting on now would extend federal funding until November 18th.
Vote, the yeas are 219, the nays are 203. The motion is adopted, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. For purposes, the gentleman from Kentucky seek recognition.
Mr.